Welcome back to another installment of the Lions Den. We're here with Sharman and Pastor Spence. We just want to go ahead and recap yesterday's message. We went into part 3 of the Leverage series. Pastor Spence, wanted to ask you, what was your inspiration behind yesterday's message?
Well, with the pandemic that's going on, everybody's focused on it. So it's like the elephant in the room. You know, sometimes I want to move on and just try to teach something else, but I think it's important that we stay right here. Last week, we've been working on that whole idea of leverage. Tough times come. It's been said, the old adage is tough times don't last, but tough people do. They figure out a way to get out of that particular tough season in life. So with the leverage part of it, okay, this pandemic is here. So are we going to complain about it? Are we going to cry about it? Or are we really going to just do something about it? So we want to make sure that we're teaching people how to leverage this difficult time. And so we took a look at the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, and we talked from the story of the 4 brothers that carried the paralytic brother. They took him all the way up to the top of the roof, dropped him right in at the feet of Jesus. So I believe those 4 dudes were willing to use their leverage in order to get that particular person better. So during this pandemic season that we're in, school is shut down. The school year is over. A lot of parents are complaining. But what happens if one kid goes back to school, we let school go back, and one kid dies from COVID-19, then that's a mistake that I'm just not willing to make. And I'm so glad that our governors and all of the people involved decided to do the right thing. So that's kind of the inspiration. We want to keep people in the right mind frame as we go through this difficult season. It's difficult for all of us, so I got to keep teaching leverage. So this week was, yesterday was when Jesus is in the house.
One of the things that stood out to me in that sermon was the point you highlighted when they were trying to get the paralyzed man in the room. And of course they knew it was crowded, so it was okay, we can't get in this way. So they went to the top of the roof. And in that creativity, I think when you look at just kind of the area that we're in currently, of, like you said, capitalizing off that creativity instead of complaining, like, well, all right, because they could have quit. They could have said, you know what, we're going to look at this. We can't get him in there. All right, he's going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life. But they were able to say, you know what, we can get to the top. And even how you said, they couldn't see. They couldn't see down in there, so they had to listen to the voice. And I think going back to the season that we're in during this pandemic is, for one, listening to the voice of God and seeing what God has for us in this quiet time of, really, I think it's calling us to go deeper, because we have more time to go deeper. So I just think, like you said, it's being creative, stop complaining.
Yeah, yesterday I called it cognitive creativity. That cognitive means that ability to use that mind to dream the undreamable. I believe in this season, if you can really just tap into your creativity, I believe you can see things from a different approach. That's why it was important for them. They couldn't navigate the crowd on the surface level, on the level that they were on. So I believe, like right now, while we're in this pandemic, you got to take this thing to another level. That mindset has to shift, it has to change. So that mindset that used to complain, you got to change that to a mindset that becomes full of gratitude. You start appreciating, hey, I get to spend more time with my kids. Hey, I'm actually saving a little money. Actually, this thing ain't as bad as I'm making it out to be. Of course, when anyone loses their life, it's a bad thing. But that's why leverage is so important. It helps us to see that if I can just use my creativity, that cognitive ability to think outside of the box. Those brothers said, we can't get this way, but we can go up. So I'm going to challenge everybody that's watching the Lions, man. It's time to go up. Elevation is the key. Raise that mindset, man. And I believe that some books going to come forward. Some businesses are going to be birthed out of this. Marriages are going to be healed. Family relationships are going to be healed. All when we learn how to use this leverage that I'm going to keep talking about until the people get it. Until y'all take that thing up like those brothers did.
Amen. Now, something you said yesterday, there was a phrase you said. You said, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, right?
Yeah, that was that point from care and concern.
Care and concern. So with everybody being distanced right now, what are some of the ways that as believers and just people in general, since we can't be in physical proximity, what are some ways that we can show that we have that concern for other people?
Even with the social distancing and even with the shelter in place, you still can show a care and concern. I think that's been the knock on the church, is like we really don't care. We're really not concerned. We just get caught up with our weekly worship. Right. I think that's why so many people initially, like when they said the church was closed, That was an uproar because people were like, what do you mean the church closed? But in actuality, the church really wasn't closed. I mean, it just gave us an opportunity to be what we should have been a long time ago. One phrase that we often say, and I hear it all the time, let's have church. It's impossible to have church. We are the church.
Right.
So church is not something you have. Church is something you are. So that's the way we show that care and concern, by picking up the phone, giving somebody a call. If you got to go out and get essentials, hit your neighbor up and see if they need essentials. You know, drop it off. You don't have to talk to them. Just leave it on the doorstep. Let them know that you care. You know, FaceTime with people. Check in with people. I thank God for technology because it keeps us connected to one another. So those are the things that we got to do. Continue to show kindness. Be kind. I was getting essential items in the Walmart line. Everybody talked to each other. That was important to me. We were 6 feet apart, but we were nice to each other. So leverage this thing with kindness. Just doing something for people, like picking up that phone call and sending an email, text. Those are all ways that we can show that care and concern right about now. And please, by all means, check on your strong friend. You know, the one that you always rely on them to give you a word. Maybe this season you need to call and give them a word. So we got to continue to show that care and concern.
I think it goes back to the word leverage of what we keep going back to. Just even to that example that you gave, like even when out in public, you know, a lot of people, when you just pay attention to the aspect of social distancing, it's like, hey, don't come near me. Like I can't even speak to you. Like you said, but it's like we can make sure we're social distancing 6 feet apart, but I can still talk to you. You good? You know, because that person could be struggling with a loved one that had it. So I think you touching on that is a very, very big, important way to look at it. Like we can still show that care and concern by still practicing safe practices, for sure. Now, just going forward with this series of leverage, I guess from your perspective of everything that's going on, we have things that are ahead of us that we really don't know about. Just could you touch on responding to, and this may be the way I'm articulating this question. Let me see if I can get it out this way. Using leverage in unknown territory. You know, how do you, just in your life, how have you dealt with that? Like even as a pastor, dealing with this, like you didn't know this was gonna happen, but being quick enough to think on your feet, like, okay, listen, this is how I have to process this. How do you go about that?
Well, I think it was Joshua when he took over the command after Moses died. God told him, I'm gonna take you away you've never been before. So God was telling him it's uncharted territory. You've never been this way before. So the key thing I'm gonna need you to do is to rely on me and my word. So I told Joshua, just meditate on my word day and night, and you're gonna find out that you're gonna have good success in all of your endeavors. So I believe obedience is a big part of that. Like if you really get sensitive to the voice of God, because God began to speak to me in this past week, I was a little disobedient because he dropped in my spirit that the next wave that's coming after COVID-19 is natural disaster. I heard that clear. Earthquakes, tornadoes, natural disasters in all parts, including the United States of America. So even as we get past this pandemic, there's always going to be something next that's around the corner. So I'm learning to be obedient to God. So when I release stuff like that, it's not to send you into a panic mode, but to let you know that God's word is true. Amos 3:7 says God does nothing without revealing his plans to his servants, the prophets. So that's why we got to keep our prophetic ears tuned to God and then be obedient to what he gives us. And I think that's the key for us, being able to handle this uncharted territory. You know, I've never led churches through a pandemic before. It's brand new to me. I learn something every single day, you know, so we're going to get through this together. But the main thing for us is to be totally reliant on God and not within our own self-efforts.
So with that, uncharted territory, you said you never led a church through this part. So in this season, what do you feel like God's really been teaching you, something that you might not have known before?
Well, it's not that I've not known before, because I've always believed in God. It's like some things have to be experiential. You know, I can tell people that God is a healer, but I really don't know for myself until I've been sick. You know, when you get sick and you need for him to be a healer, then that's something totally different. So those are the things that I'm learning during this pandemic pandemonium that we're experiencing. Like, this is new, but as I go through it, it's like what God told Moses, I am that I am. So whatever you need for him to be in this particular season of your life, just trust him to be that. And the one thing I know about God, he's never failed me yet. That's not just cliche. That's just real life, true story. So I'm excited about that.
And just to continue, I think in this sermon, even in this series, I think this is called the Lion's Den for a reason. We chow down on some good meat that you throw out during the sermon. You gave a great point that I think a lot of us, whether you're seasoned or unseasoned, struggle with, and that human responsibility and that part that God is waiting on us to respond and act a certain way. And just quickly for me, I've learned that, you know, there are some things that won't happen until we get aligned.
Yeah.
Could you touch on that a little bit? Go a little bit more.
Well, I touched on it briefly. I couldn't get too bogged down in the sermon, but theodicy is simply the reconciliation of the concept that God is divine in nature and all of his divine goodness. And how do we reconcile evil, sickness, and disease in the world? And then there's this concept that if he's a sovereign God, why don't he just push the button and make this COVID-19 stop? So we look at that piece and say, God is sovereign, he's in control. Now, I believe sickness comes from the pits of hell, and I believe that the reason sickness happens is because we live in a fallen world, sin-cursed world. Since the fall of Adam and Eve in the garden, these have been the ill effects that we've had to deal with from generation after generation. But I do believe that God is sovereign, he's in control. But when you trace him throughout the Bible, there's always been a role for humans to play. You know, when God needed a deliverer for Israel, he raised up Moses. You know, when he wanted to conquer the promised land, he raised up Joshua. You know, when God wanted to save the world before the flood, he chose a brother by the name of Noah. And everybody I'm naming to you were human beings that had issues just like every person that's watching us now. So it's good for us to be in the lion's den, because if God has set a pattern of using humans, then that means we have responsibility. So that's why leverage is so important, because we have to play our part in this pandemic. You know, the doctors and the nurses, they have a human responsibility. God heals through doctors and nurses. I don't think any of us want all of the doctors and nurses to walk out of the hospital and just say God is sovereign. God is sovereign, but human responsibility also has a role to play. So it's not if or. I taught it yesterday. It's but and. It's both. Both are necessary. And God is looking for people that are on this string with us to use their leverage and get involved.
Amen.
So with the last point was the costly conversion. So with that, I know that in this time, there's going to be ways that people have to dedicate themselves. We want to see this time change. We want to see this pandemic go away. So what are some ways that we can lock in so that we can make that costly conversion to see it come to pass? Change,
there's a cost for change. For those of you that go to the gym, it costs you. You know, that last set of curls, if you want those biceps, you know, to poke out like mine, you got to hit it one more time. You know, so that's a cost to change and genuine change. And the 4 brothers in the text that were carrying the one brother, the paralytic, it's amazing that it was 5 of them. 5 represents the number of grace. But here it was. They understood that we all got a role to play, and if we want change to show up, I know this isn't our home, but maybe we need to just cut a hole in the roof. We need to dig the roofs were made out of clay and mud. So they just took the roof apart, and they took in consideration the cost. But you know what? They came to the conclusion that this is a cost that I'm willing to pay. So when you're sitting there and you're saying that you want to be a successful author, you got to be willing to pay the cost. That means you might got to shut the TV off, get off Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and pay the cost of sitting down for about 4 or 5 hours. Some of you are going to find out that if you just remove the distractions and actually sit at the computer, it's going to come on like a water faucet. But you got to be willing to pay that cost. So all of my dreamers that want to do successful things in life, just know that change is not going to happen until you get committed to paying the cost that produce change. Those 4 brothers paid the cost. They were willing. They like, whatever it costs to get this roof fixed, we'll take care of it later. But right now, our home needs to get better. So we're going to tear the roof off the mother. Tear the roof off the mother. Tear the roof off the mother.
Well, you know what? Listen, we just chowed down. We full for right now because we lying, so we always stay hungry. But just for now, we're going to wrap up this segment of the Lions Den. Truly blessed by the sermon, blessed by the nuggets that Pastor just dropped today. And we're going to see y'all next week. Stay tuned in. Lions Den.
Go.